Coming up on podcast 1065, the Hyundai IONIQ 5 is thrashing its competitors at charge speed. Stick around and I'll tell you more. Also on the podcast today, VW ID4 goes off-roading, Rivian get closer to customer deliveries of their truck in June, and Rimac C2 goes drag stripping. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily, the edition for the start of the week, Monday, 26th of April. My name is Martin Lee, and I go through every EV story so you don't have to. So the IONIQ 5 YouTube reviews all kind of landed, at least in the UK, at the same time. Today is about 7:30, so I guess an embargo lifted. That's when you have an agreement with something like a car maker not to publish your video before anyone else's. It's a bit of an agreement so that you get access as long as you play by the rules of the game, and plenty of those channels did. So let's have a look at what they've been talking about. Well, Fully Charged is up, and Robert Llewellyn mentions that it's the most gorgeous car he says he has ever seen, which is interesting. He says he doesn't like the crossovers that everyone else is making, and acceleration was nice but not staggering, but he wasn't in sport mode at the time. The adapter to plug in the domestic plug lives under the floor that he found in the boot. Loves the regen paddles behind the wheel, the clicky buttons, the style of the interior. Says like driving an Apple store, he says, and he has a fight with the motorized charge flap. It is well worth watching just for that. Johnny Smith from the Late Break Show, he really liked the 3-meter wheelbase. He said more than a Range Rover. He loved the flat floor. And particularly, he loved the design of the rear window because it's done in a way that doesn't require a rear windscreen wiper. Kind of the aero pushes the water off. Love the 800-volt charging system. The augmented head-up display says it works really well. Struggle to find fault with it. 115 mile an hour top speed, not a problem. Worth watching just to see what he powers the car from. Yeah, I won't give it away, but it's definitely worth watching. What car? Like the twin screens, actually, they were pretty impressed by the charge speed, 0 to 80%. They liked the e-pedal style, which is actually iPedal. For those watching on YouTube, I'll pause it because I don't want to get in trouble. The iPedal is their version of Nissan's e-pedal, and it's got the kind of one pedal driving feature that many EVs have these days, and so they like that. The real key one, I would say, is the next move review. That's the German YouTube channel, and they liked the pixel lights, the self-presenting door handles. He showed the internal plug socket, which the UK ones didn't. It's under the rear seats, and none of them had a shot of that. So he showed off the key, which has 2 buttons on it for driving the car forwards and backwards. And again, they none of the UK reviews had that. So I wonder why they didn't. Maybe they weren't allowed to, possibly. But again, this is a different car. I think it's a different car anyway, but at least it's in Germany. And he charges it on Ionity, and it charges at 223 kilowatts. That's at 50% state of charge. That is incredible. That's insane charge speeds. And that leads us nicely on to our next story. And that is Hyundai, with the IONIQ 5, have released a video of the car charging, unlike previous examples. This time, it's the actual car maker who are releasing a 10 to 80% state of charge video. It was shot in South Korea on the 20th of April. Outside temperature 19 degrees, battery temp 15 when it started, says inside EVs. Now, the charging curve is pretty complex, with lots of sharp increases and drops along the way. And I can show you this online if you're watching the YouTube version of the show. The charge curve of many EVs would start high, and then sometimes it steps down, sometimes it curves down, like on the ID4. This one, though, has jumps up and jumps down. So the actual peak charge speed isn't at the beginning of the session. It starts about 115 kilowatts at 10% state of charge, gets about 15% state of charge and goes up to 187. Then it jumps again up to 220, and then it jumps again, and it peaks at about 225 kilowatts, at least in this video, about 51% state of charge. So the official Hyundai video, and I'll just show you some, again, if you're watching the YouTube version, I'll show you some clips. I won't play it again, just for kind of copyright and stuff. But 10 minutes, 9 minutes 30 into the charging. So you get to your motorway service station, plug in, and in 10 minutes you are halfway full, and it's charging at 226 kilowatts. That is just going to rewrite the rule book. If this is, it's repeatable, but I'm not saying it's a budget car exactly, but it is certainly a family achievable car to own, not Porsche Taycan specs or not, Audi e-tron GT specs. We know that Teslas can take this high speed, but we know their charge curve is very different. You have to arrive at a very low state of charge. Battery has to be preconditioned, and it ramps down super quick. So this is kind of almost the opposite. You arrive and it starts a little bit slowly. Not that slowly is 115 kilowatts at 10%. But then as you go through 120, 188, 222, and you get to that magic mark of about 225 at 47, 48%, and then it ramps down, then it starts to decrease. And that is, I think, the sign of a good understanding of their battery pack and their cells and a well-behaving BMS, that it's constantly monitoring what the pack can take, rather than these kind of pre-programmed, which some of their previous cars have done, these kind of pre-programmed jumps down, because that's not the way that cell voltage works. So I'm really impressed with this. Again, none of the UK reviewers that I saw gave it the kind of charging test that we saw the German reviewer do. But I can't wait to see more of these on the roads. I'll pop a link to Inside EVs in the show notes if you would like to read more and have a look at more. Next, we will talk about the Rimac C2 or Rimac C_2 Hypercar acceleration. They say it will be the fastest accelerating production car in the world. They did 10 launches, and there's a YouTube video online on the Rimac channel. They started at 82%. So they weren't even kind of gaming the system. They weren't even starting at 100%. So they started at 80%. They went down to 60% over those 10 runs, and it just looks like the real deal hypercar, reinventing massive technology. And again, I won't show the whole video again for copyright, but I actually like Mate is just as a founder of a company wearing a t-shirt in the video. He's just like the anti-CEO, isn't he? The fully homologated road-going prototype was put to the test in quarter-mile runs and managed to complete the task in 8.95 seconds. They were doing 156.1 miles an hour. And it's fascinating in the video. He goes through what all the different track controls are, so you can shift the balance from front to rear and which axle's getting the most power. And 8.94 seconds to do the quarter mile. This was on a track which he makes clear wasn't a drag strip. It was an old disused road, and it was dirty and bad asphalt. And so he says the 0 to 60 time of 2.33 seconds was quite bad, was the quote. So that's just something else when they do it in controlled conditions. Rimac previously saying 1.85 seconds is the time that they are aiming for with that 0 to 60. Top speed of 258 miles an hour on the C2, almost 2,000 horsepower. And that is getting close, they were saying in the video. Go and watch it. I'll pop a link in the show notes to having journalists and reviewers have a play with the car. Be amazing. All right, Tesla's earning call is next in the news today. Tesla earnings call is late night for me, maybe early hours. I'm +5 Eastern, so it's after markets close. Either way, it's always a very late night for me, so we won't delay the podcast today to get this show out. So it'll be on tomorrow's Q1 production and delivery numbers, confirming that they delivered 184,800 cars, produced over 180,000 from January to March in Q1 this year. The Model S and the Model X were absent of course, no sign of the Model S Day or the refresh day that Elon Musk promised back in either January or February. It was within a week, I think, after he was last speaking, and that hasn't materialised. Deliveries have been pushed back of the Model S, the refresh, from February, March to, I think many people showing July now, those that have bought the car. Look, they're not the first EV maker to face delays, and they absolutely won't be the last. And it'll be interesting if on the call they directly address what that is, whether it's software, whether it's production issues, whether it is chip shortages that seem to be affecting the global automotive industry. Well, not seem to, but are. And so we wait to see what they say about that. Rivian are next in the news today, and they have updated their website with a kind of a Q&A, but certainly a get to know Rivian section. So we can have a look at that today, like a learn more section. They've called it Experience, and they're all about the ownership experience, which, when you think how expensive their trucks are, that's not a bad thing. But they have put it into various topics of purchasing, charging, servicing, and even their own insurance product. So they talk about how their car buying is made simple. You can do it all online. Sounds very much like Tesla. How you can charge on their own network. They're calling it the Rivian Adventure Network. Sounds very much like Tesla. How they... actually, this is interesting. They have their own network, not only their own network of service centres and service, and they have kind of Ranger service that will come to you. Sounds very familiar. But also, over-the-air updates. Yep, sounds very familiar. So all of these kind of are being taken from Tesla's playbook, and that's no bad thing, because I think they're all the things that Tesla has done really, really well. And also, Tesla insurance is being, if not copied, because I don't know what the back end looks like, whether it is just working with a partner to give preferential pricing or not. So all of those things now live on the Rivian website, and this looks like they're getting closer to actually getting the cars out there. One of the really interesting things about buying the car, I think it's in this section at least, is the Rivian guides, and that is assigning you a dedicated person who will be your point man, your point woman, when you are going through that process of being a Rivian owner, to help with all of your questions. And they can do that a bit like how when Tesla was a smaller company, if you bought Tesla CPO car, so coming from them pre-owned, they would often, it was like getting a new car. So any dinks and dents, they'd sort it out. Anything that was scuffed, if you go back in the day, you could buy a used Tesla and they would have just gone through it and made sure it was in tip-top condition. Clearly, when you're making 500,000, 1 million cars a year, which they get close to that this year possibly, you can't do that anymore. But when they were smaller, they did, and Rivian look like they're doing that more. Bespoke personal touch, which I like, and it's absolutely they should be doing that. Last in the news today, we're talking about the VW ID4 challenging the Baja Peninsula. It's an article coming to us by the way of Slash Gear. Volkswagen is finding its newest ID4 electric crossover in the National Off-Roading Racing Association Mexican 1000 race in the Baja Peninsula. Most people are not aware that a Mayor's Manx, an off-road dune buggy based on the iconic Beetle, won the inaugural Nora Mexican back in 1967, says Slash Gear. And now it's the VW ID4 turn to prove its merits in the harsh Mexican terrain, reports Slash Gear. It starts with a stock ID4, first edition, with a single rear-mounted motor. Battery pack, of course, remember, is 82 kilowatt hours. And then Reese Millen Racing have given it a full set of rally-style coilover struts and tubular fronts, lower control arms, boxed lower rear links, says Slash Gear. And with the mods in place, it sits 2 inches higher off the ground than stock. A bit more cooling going in, and additional skid plates. So when you look at the pictures of what they've done, it's definitely an ID4, but yeah, they've done a ton of stuff to this, mainly around safety, I would say, when you look at the roll cage and things like that. Different displays inside to give you a bit more data than a typical ID4 would have, and of course, a spare tyre in there. racing seats, harnesses, all those kind of things, and a lot more cooling. But awesome. I love stuff like this because it's so cool when companies get to the stage of taking EVs and messing about with them, whether performance runs or off-roading in this, or kitting them out specifically for the the drag strip. All of these things just show signs that the EV market is growing, is maturing, and that's a really, really good thing for electric vehicles. All right, question of the week this week, which we are asking you to email in. Read about on Sunday, as always, with emobilitynorway.com. What's the most effective consumer education regarding EVs? Difficult one, but one that I think is going to be really popular this week. What's the most effective consumer education about EVs? Get your email in. hello@evnewsdaily.com is my email address. Well, as always, if you can ever check out the Patreon page, I really appreciate it. It means an awful lot to have a look at our Patreon. It's how we fund the podcast. It's patreon.com, patreon.com/EVNewsDaily. Little mention for our premium partners, as we do every day. Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Porsche of The Village in Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East, nationalcarcharging.com and alohacharge.com, Derek Riley and his EV Review Ireland YouTube channel, Richard at rsev.co.uk for buying and selling EVs in the UK, and eMobility Norway as well. Have a good one, see you tomorrow, and remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.